conducting airways, because you explained the rest of it right there. From the circuitry all the way down to the terminal bronchiole. Julie, what is plateau pressure? So we went from the circuit all the way to the terminal bronchioles. What's left?
It's like the pressure that goes to the bottom
What's the bottom?
of the lungs,
What's the very bottom? What are they?
the alveoli.
There you go. So we're talking about alveolar pressure. How much pressure does it take to pop open those alveoli? So if you have a volume of 500 set on your vent and your compliance is getting worse, so lungs are stiffening, right? Plateau pressure is going to increase because it's going to take more pressure to pop open those alveoli, right? This is kind of where we left off yesterday, and we kind of decided what disease processes and conditions fit in the peak pressure category and the plateau pressure category, correct? So let's go a little bit deeper now and talk about lung compliance. Because we talked about airway resistance already, right? When airway resistance goes up, what happens to peak pressure? Does everyone agree that it goes up?
Yeah.
Because increased airway resistance is bad, right? So it's going to take more pressure to get through all of the resistance. So peak pressure goes up. If airway resistance goes up, what happens to plateau pressure?
Stay the same.
Stays the same. Because we're not talking about airway resistance here, are we? We're talking about alveolar pressure. Airway resistance. Connect those dots. When there's an airway resistance issue, we're talking about peak pressure. When there's an overall lung compliance issue, we're talking about what? Plateau. Overall lung compliance. As the lungs get stiffer, am I talking about the airways having secretions in it, or am I talking about the alveoli filling up with fluid?
Alveoli being.
Yeah, the alveoli is filling up with fluid, so compliance is decreasing, making that number bigger. Okay. Is everyone with me so far? We're going to kind of put these two together. So what happens when this goes up? Does this do something with it? What happens when this one moves? Does this do something? So we're going to kind of talk about that. And it all comes back to equations. All comes back to equations. So again, you know who emailed me last night, right?
Definitely wasn't me.
Lung compliance is going to be measured in milliliters per centimeter of water pressure. You have to remember these units because when we do these graphs, you're going to have to label them for me. You're going to do that in lab today and next week. We kind of already talked about a lot of this stuff already. You should understand these basics just from health science. You're assessing tidal volume and how it's delivered to the alveoli, right? Plateau pressure, okay? If we have low lung compliance, is my lungs getting stiff or are they losing elastic recoil?
Stiff.
They're getting stiff. Decreased compliance means lungs are getting stiffer. That could be a million things, right? Fluid, inflammation, ARDS, the list goes on and on and on and on. Now, what if we have high lung compliance? High lung compliance. So your compliance is skyrocketed. Think about that. What the heck does that mean? Not normal, high. High compliance. Floppy lungs. That means you just are losing, depending on your disease process, the elastic recoil of those alveoli. So you know how you have a bunch of your little grape clusters on COPD, right? Just tons of them. All these little grape clusters, right? And then what happens? These walls start breaking down, correct? Over time. So now those alveoli can't squeeze down to get everything across the AC membrane and exhale the CO2, right? We're losing elastic recoil. Because now what's happening, instead of going and getting rid and taking in, what's happening? We just lost our recoil. Is CO2 being exhaled?
No.
No, it's not. Is oxygen crossing properly? It's not. Because remember, even around this part, what's wrapped around here?
Vessels.
Capillary.
Capillaries, vessels, they're gone now. If you lose that, well, right there's your, right, the buses, they're gone. So increased compliance is gonna be that loss of elastic recoil. Obviously, what's gonna fit in that category? You are right, what's it called? What's the category?
Fibrosis.
Obstructive diseases, where decreased compliance is going to be restricted, yes. So, obstructive. Restrictive. We just talked about elastic recoil and crawl. This is what makes up lung compliance, total lung compliance, those 4 items. Is it obstructive? Is it restrictive? Are we messing with the elastic recoil? Is there some type of airway resistance issue? Can you be my Vanna? Wait a minute, let me see if this works. The last time I tried it, it didn't work. Yeah, I can never get it to work. Is it on? That would be the first question. I don't even see it on. Yeah. you want to be my Vanna. Oh, well, I think